You know the story of Steve Jobs, right? The genius, the visionary who gave us the iPhone. But that's not the story we're telling today. We're going to talk about his failure. We're diving into the epic saga of his exile, his redemption, and the incredible comeback that didn't just save a company, it literally redefined the modern world.
And this idea right here, it was everything to him. It was the core of his entire philosophy. For Jobs, a product wasn't just a bunch of parts in a cool-looking shell. It was a single integrated experience. How it felt, how it functioned, how it fit into your life. That was the design. And this belief, this obsession, was the seed for his biggest triumphs and his biggest downfall.
I mean, just think about that. Can you imagine? The founder, the visionary, the very soul of the company gets forced out. But this wasn't the end of his story. Not even close. In fact, it was the beginning of the most important chapter of his life. A journey that would, believe it or not, lead him right back home.
Okay, so to really get the comeback, you got to understand the fall. The rise of Apple was this classic Silicon Valley fairy tale, but inside this kingdom, a massive conflict was brewing, one that would lead to the founder's shocking exile.
Yeah, his path was, well, it wasn't exactly your typical CEO track. Dropping out of college to study calligraphy, traveling to India to find himself, working at Atari. These experiences all came together to shape this really unique perspective that blended art with technology, long before Apple was even a thing.
So forget about those sleek white iPhones for a second. The most valuable company in the world started right here in a garage with Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak selling simple circuit boards to other electronics geeks. It was as humble and as passionate as it gets.
And this is where the wheels started to come off. As Apple got bigger, Jobs brought in John Sculley, a big-shot CEO from Pepsi. And their visions? They were polar opposites. Jobs was all about product-first innovation and design. Sculley was about marketing, profits, and a traditional corporate structure. It was a clash between the artist and the suit. And in the end, the board sided with the suit.
And just like that, in 1985, the unthinkable happened. After a really bitter power struggle, Steve Jobs was forced to resign from the company he co-founded in his parents' garage. He was out, gone.
But here's the thing. This wasn't him licking his wounds in defeat. This was his time in the wilderness, a decade in exile, where he would learn, build, and without even knowing it, forge the very tools he'd need to one day come back and save the kingdom he'd lost.
And man, he did not waste a single second. The very same year he left Apple, he founded a new company called Next. Now, the Next computer itself wasn't a huge commercial hit, but its software, it was absolutely revolutionary. He was focused on something called object-oriented programming. Think of it like building with digital Legos. It was powerful, flexible, and just years ahead of its time. And get this, he wasn't just building one revolutionary company. He was building two at the same time. In 1986, he bought a tiny computer graphics group from Lucasfilm that he would turn into Pixar. So while he was changing the entire movie industry with Toy Story, he was also perfecting this incredibly powerful operating system at Next. He was quietly building his arsenal for the future.
Looking back, he actually said that getting fired was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. To the rest of the world, it looked like a massive failure, but for him, it was liberating. It gave him a chance to start over, to refine his vision without all the corporate red tape. The wilderness wasn't a punishment. It was his training ground.
And all that training, it was about to be put to the ultimate test. Because while Jobs was out there building the future, the kingdom he left behind, it was absolutely crumbling. The stage was set for one of the most unbelievable comeback stories in business history.
Apple had totally lost its soul. Without Jobs, the product line was a confusing disaster, profits were in a nosedive, and the company that had basically invented personal computing was on the verge of just disappearing.
The company was on life support. They were desperate. They needed a miracle. And their entire survival would hinge on a single decision that nobody saw coming. So Apple, in a last-ditch effort to replace its ancient software, started shopping around for a modern operating system, and their search led them to one company in particular. And then, in a move that stunned the tech world, Apple bought Next. Now, on paper, they were just buying an operating system. But the real prize, the thing that would change everything, was the man who came with it. Steve Jobs returned to Apple. The king was back. The exile was officially over.
But he didn't just walk back in the door.
No, he came back and launched a full-blown revolution. He immediately started applying all the focus and the vision he'd sharpened during his years away, and he was going to resurrect the company he loved. His first move was both brutal and brilliant. He came in like a whirlwind, killing dozens of confusing products. He famously slashed the entire product line down to just 4 things. He focused the entire company on one bold, beautiful idea: the iMac. It was colorful, it was simple, and it put design right back at the heart of Apple. It was a statement: the founder is back.
And the iMac? That was just the first shot. That powerful software he'd been perfecting at Next, that became the beating heart of the new Mac OS X, and it unleashed this incredible wave of innovation. First the iPod, then the iPhone, then the iPad. One after another, these products didn't just sell well, they created entire industries. A new dynasty was born.
I mean, look at the results. It's just staggering. You go from the brink of complete failure in 1996, you launch the iPhone in 2007, and then by 2011, Apple becomes the most valuable company in the world. The comeback was complete.
So what's the big takeaway here? For us, for anyone trying to build something, lead a team, or just chase an idea, what's the real lesson from the founder?
The lessons here are huge. First, that failure isn't the end. It's often the beginning of something much better. It can be an incredible catalyst. His time away gave him the space to build the very tools he needed for his masterpiece. It also proves that a founder's passion is just irreplaceable. And finally, that real leadership is about having the guts to bet on your convictions, even when it's hard.
And that really is the question this whole story leaves us with. You might not be fired from a multi-billion-dollar company you created, but we all face our own version of the wilderness. A project fails, a job ends, an idea gets shot down. The question Steve Jobs' story asks us is this: when you find yourself out there, what will you choose to build?